Travel sickness in dogs. Many human beings are familiar with the problem. Hardly installed in a car or on board a moving boat that nausea occurs, they get motion sickness. Unfortunately, it happens that our four-legged friends are also subject to it. This article provides you with all the useful information on motion sickness in dogs. Is motion sickness a danger for my dog? Travel sickness obviously does not pose a serious danger to a dog's health, but nausea and vomiting on every trip are not desirable for you or your pet. If these discomforts are also associated with fear of car travel, a vicious circle can quickly set in. It is therefore particularly important to act against the motion sickness from which your animal suffers. Symptoms. How does travel sickness manifest itself in dogs? Motion sickness, also called motion sickness, in dogs often manifests itself by the following symptoms: restlessness or inertia, moans, barks that can go as far as howls, gasps, salivation excessive, increased tendency to swallow or lick the nose, vomiting, defecation and urination, very rare, most of the time. These signals appear in roughly the order listed above, but obviously not all animals exhibit the full spectrum of symptoms. There are also dogs who start vomiting without warning, even during a short trip. Causes. What causes motion sickness in dogs? In the inner ear of the dog is the organ of balance, vestibular organ, which perceives movements during the car journey. But during this time, your dog's eyes do not discern any movement, since your animal does not move on its own. Stimulation of the organ of balance and the consequent secretion of histamine lead to nausea and vomiting. Fear as an important factor. Another important aspect related to motion sickness in dogs is the fear. For example, if your pet is not used to driving, his nausea will probably not be caused by the rocking motion of the vehicle alone, but also by the fear resulting from the situation. Similarly, a dog who has already had to fight motion sickness several times will associate the car with nausea, so that his fear will increase over time, as will his motion sickness. It is estimated that 1 dog in 6 suffers from motion sickness. Puppies and young dogs are particularly prone to it. Hopefully, these dogs' motion sickness will go away as they grow up, but if not, it's possible to help them. Therapy. How to treat travel sickness in dogs. As there is not a single cause at the origin of motion sickness in dogs, the treatment of this disease is also based on different elements. There's no point in just treating your pet's nausea if the mere sight of the family car is already enough to make him panic. Training to overcome fear. If your dog has already developed a fear of car travel, medication alone will not be able to overcome the problem. You will need to arm yourself with patience to overcome his fears by proceeding in stages. Approach the car first with your companion and stay close to the vehicle. If your dog remains calm, reward him. Your pet will associate staying close to the car with a positive feeling. Once this first step has been taken, the next step is to get your dog into the car. Again, peaceful behavior will be rewarded with a small treat and petting sessions. Patience and many rewards. If your dog stays calm in the stationary vehicle, you can move on to the next step, which is to start the engine and possibly drive a few yards. If this proves to be possible without your dog panicking, and only on this condition, you can undertake your first trip over a short distance. At the end of this journey, it is essential to give your dog a positive experience. Go for a long walk with your companion or plan a meeting with his favorite playmate. You can then gradually increase the distance of the car trip. Although this training to overcome fear may take some time, be sure to be patient and only move on to the next step when the previous one has been completed without your dog being afraid. If you absolutely have to take the car with your pet during this training period, always give him medication against nausea. If you don't, you risk jeopardizing all the progress you've made so far. Medications for nausea. All this effort to overcome the fear will obviously be of no use if your dog feels nauseous as soon as he gets in the car. This is why it is always better to use medication in addition to training. If your pet realizes that he can take the car without being subject to nausea and vomiting, his fear will decrease. As nausea is caused by the secretion of histamine, most dogs suffering from motion sickness have so far received antihistamines. In addition to their action against nausea, these drugs also have a calming, sedative effect. The idea of a tranquilizer sounds good at first, especially when you think of the dog paralyzed by fear. But since this effect naturally lasts longer than the car journey, these remedies are not the ideal solution. Fortunately, the meropetant has meanwhile proven itself as a particularly effective remedy for combating nausea. This active ingredient acts on certain receptors in the dog's brain and thus prevents vomiting. Your veterinarian will surely give you useful advice on this subject. It's not a cheap drug, unfortunately, but if you want to ensure everyone has a stress-free trip, it's worth the investment. Homeopathy to treat motion sickness in dogs. If the motion sickness from which your dog suffers is mild, or if you want to spare your animal a visit to the veterinarian first, you can resort to following homeopathic remedies. Cocculus. Twice a day for 2 to 3 weeks in case of daily training. Nux vomica, petroleum, tabacum, strychninus phosphoricum. It is advisable to administer these remedies half an hour to an hour before the car trip. Repeat the treatment as needed during the trip. Again, it is better to seek advice from an expert to choose the right remedy for the situation. Homeopathic medicines are not suitable for all dogs with motion sickness and their specific symptoms. Ginger in capsule form can also provide relief for dogs with only mild symptoms. Prevention. How can I prevent my dog from suffering from motion sickness? The adage that applies to most illnesses also applies to motion sickness: prevention is better than cure. While preventative measures are of course no guarantee of overcoming motion sickness, they will get you off to a good start. Ideally, the breeder will have already accustomed the puppies to the first short car trips. When picking up your new companion to take him home, be sure to spot any signs of discomfort during the journey. If your pup is feeling unwell, break your ride and take him for a short walk. Even if the journey takes a little longer than expected, it is best for your pet to associate the first car journey with nausea and vomiting as little as possible. Tips for the first car journeys. Then regularly get your puppy used to driving. Start only with short trips and gradually increase the duration of the trip. The rule of thumb remains the same. At the end of each road trip, be sure to reward your young dog as often as possible with a positive experience. Here are some other useful tips, especially for the first car journeys. Make sure you drive as safely as possible. Avoid loud noises, such as the slamming of a car door. Establish a serene atmosphere in the car. Gently divert your dog's attention by giving him lots of petting or giving him a toy. If motion sickness has already given you unpleasant first experiences, a change of position in the car can sometimes work miracles. Try different places in the vehicle, and once you have chosen the most comfortable place for your dog, make sure your pet's safe travel.